Hey everybody, you're watching a physio named Jonah. That's this guy. Today's video tackles a topic that is very near and dear to my heart today because of how uncomfortably near and dear to my head it was as a young athlete. Yes, I am in fact talking about concussions. Now, according to the government of Canada, there are around 200,000 concussions in Canada each year, which is kind of a staggering number when you consider that Canada only has like 250,000 people, and the rest of our population is just polar bears living in igloos drinking ice caps. What I mean by saying that is that concussions are kind of everywhere. Odds are if you're watching this video, you've either had a concussion yourself, know someone who has, or at least seen that movie with Will Smith. Something you may have heard when you had your concussion or knew someone who went through it was to go into a dark room with no electronics, screens, sounds, anything, and just do nothing. And then come out later once you're better. This type of advice used to be really popular in the medical community, but it's not anymore. We're past that. In this video, I'll be highlighting what darkroom isolation means, why we don't use it anymore, and what we do instead in terms of managing concussions now. Let's go ahead and kick things off. Alright, you heard the doc. Go ahead and get in there. Hey, what am I supposed to do in here again? Nothing at all. Like, absolutely nothing. Can I? Nope. But what about? Don't even think about it. Okay, fine. Geez, like, when do I come out? You come out when you're feeling better. And how do I know when that is? Okay, rest up, champ. I'll see ya. So darkroom therapy for concussions is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. The recommendation was to go into a dark room, do nothing, and come out once you felt better. Generally after concussions, patients have symptoms. I mean, that's why they're seeking medical advice in the first place, right? Generally, these symptoms for concussions include sensitivity to light, sensitivity to sound, nausea, dizziness, or an overall sense of fatigue and just not feeling like yourself. Going into a quiet, dark room then seems like a reasonable way to resolve a lot of those sensitivities. There obviously isn't a lot of light in a dark room, and unless you're the one creating it, can I at least get like some goldfish crackers or something? There's not a lot of sound in them either. You're also not likely to make your nausea, dizziness, fatigue any worse by being relaxed in a dark room, so sounds like we're okay so far, right? The dark room is a space where patients' symptoms aren't going to get any worse because you're creating a very relaxed environment around them. The problem becomes once we try to leave the dark room. Oh, look who's ready to come out. So you're feeling totally better? Yeah, I think I'm feeling a lot better. Not feeling sensitive to light anymore? No, it seems like we're good. Okay. How about now? Okay, well that definitely hurts my head. Ah, that's too bad. Looks like you're gonna have to get back in there. Oh yeah, but... You heard the doctor. Can't come out until your symptoms are gone. Okay, but my dizziness is a lot better though. Oh, is it? Okay. Are you dizzy now? Huh? Does that make you feel a little bit dizzy? I mean, more just embarrassed that we live together, but my noise sensitivity is a lot better too. Oh, well, I'm really happy to hear that. Okay, fine. I'm going. I'll go back in. Yeah, the issues start to arise once we try and leave the dark room. The general prescription used to be to come out of the dark room once your symptoms were no longer there. That is, you're not feeling sensitive to light, not feeling sensitive to sound, nauseous, dizzy, any of those things anymore. Well, it's pretty easy to not have any symptoms when you're in a dark room surrounded by no stimulation. As soon as you leave the room though, you're reintroduced to all of those things that do create stimulation and thus lead to symptoms, and you aren't ready for them. So now you leave the dark room and you're re-exposed to the stimulation of the outside world. There are basically three options that can happen here. Option number one, your symptoms are exactly the same as before. Obviously this isn't great. Option number two, your symptoms are slightly better. However, since they're not totally better, you're still going back into the dark room anyway. And option number three, your symptoms are actually worse than when you went into the room in the first place. You might be surprised that number three from that list existed at all. How could our symptoms get worse? We haven't been doing anything to make them worse. But the problem is we haven't been doing anything to make them better either. If we're not exposing ourselves to stimulation or things that can create symptoms, it can actually heighten our sensitivity to those same things. Here's another issue with the dark room. Patients' concussion symptoms can be incredibly different from one another. Let's use sound sensitivity. You might have one patient who's sensitive to the sound of their own voice, while another one is only sensitive to going to a college party. Using the same treatment protocol for both of these patients is going to miss somebody. Prescribing a dark room for everyone is going to mistreat patients. All right, fine. We got a new doctor who's not from the early 1900s, and he said you're allowed to come out now. Whew, well, thanks. I was starting to go a little bit stir-crazy in there. Why did we go to that old school doctor anyway? I don't know. Probably some narrative explanation for these sketches. Yeah, that definitely fits. So I'm allowed to do things that don't make my symptoms too much worse then? Yeah, I don't think you're allowed to play video games though. Really? I think my symptoms can handle it. I kind of want to give it a go. No, pretty sure you're not allowed to. Kind of seems like you just don't want me to so you can have the Switch all to yourself. Look, I'm this close to Ganondorf's castle. I'm this close. That's what I thought. I'm going to play Mario Kart. Oh, sure, I'll be Luigi. Modern concussion rehab, then, is focused on exposing patients to specific stimulus for them, as opposed to avoiding all stimulations for everyone. The goal is to provide an immediate break from stimulation that causes symptoms if we need to, but reintroduce those things as quickly as we can. Let's use light sensitivity as an example. If you're sensitive to light, the first treatment step is not going to be going outside to stare directly into the sun. It is pretty fun though. Instead, you may start by doing activities in a dimly lit room and increasing the brightness of that room slowly. You start, and as your symptoms start to improve, push the stimulation a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more light, a little bit more light, until you're back to doing the things that you love. I feel like it's imprinting on my brain. What I've just described was an example of progressive exposure to stimulus. Now, as an astute YouTube viewer, you may be wondering, how do we know when to increase the stimulus without increasing the symptoms too much? When we communicate this to patients and we monitor this, an analogy that we may use is the stoplight analogy. Green light activities are activities that do not cause an increase in symptom level at all during or afterwards. Yellow lights may cause an increase in symptoms during or a little bit afterwards, but generally resolve back to baseline or normal symptoms quite quickly. Red light activities are ones that cause a huge increase in symptoms during or result in an elevated level of symptoms for a long time after the activity. The goal of progressive exposure is to focus on the yellow light zone. Now, we obviously don't want patients spending too much time in the red light zone because their symptoms are really bad and it's not going to be super helpful. But we also don't want patients spending all of their time in the green light zone because they're not pushing themselves. They're never kind of seeing what new thresholds they can get to. Instead, we look to slowly challenge their tolerance by increasing the challenge of what we're doing so that we can spend more time in that yellow light zone and actually stimulate a recovery. A big component of this stoplight analogy and modern concussion rehab in general is that symptoms are okay. If we're trying to spend time in the yellow light zone, that means there are going to be some symptoms. We just don't want those symptoms to be out of control and going into the red light zone. This opens up your activities a lot because you're able to do slightly more challenging things as long as your symptoms aren't getting too much worse. Again, in modern concussion rehab, symptoms are not the enemy. They're something that we just have to control and monitor as we return to activities. I do want to mention here that some modern concussion protocols may in fact still use a dark room in the first little while after the injury. And that makes sense, right? If patients' symptoms are really bad right after they had their concussion, having a space where those symptoms can come down for a few hours is fine. The change is in the intention. You don't have to stay in the room until your symptoms get better. The intention is to reintroduce things fairly quickly once able to so that we can actually go into recovery. Closing out and summarizing here at the end, darkroom therapy is something that used to be very popular in healthcare for use in concussion because patients felt good to be in a symptom-free space. However, they didn't really do a whole lot to help patients progressively get better from their concussion. So in modern concussion rehab, the emphasis is instead on a slow and steady return to activities while monitoring symptoms. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you guys so much for watching. I honestly really appreciate it. I hope that if you had a concussion in the past, or if you're dealing with one right now, or you know somebody who's going through it, that this video was helpful. If you enjoyed the video, consider hitting that thumbs up button down below or subscribing to the channel. Both of these things help my channel grow and help my videos reach more interested viewers like yourself. If you have a concussion related question, feel free to drop it in the comments section below and I'll do my best to get back to you there. I honestly really look forward to when people leave me questions, and I don't tend to leave anybody hanging, so reach out if you do have a question for me. Most importantly though guys, as always, move your body, have a laugh today, and I will see you at the next video.